Hey, how's it going? I'm Ron.
I'm Zach.
We're from Widetrack, and we're here on Influences, the show where we talk about bands that have influenced our music throughout the years. And this is a very special one, and will be in two parts. We are going to talk about Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin's one of my favorite bands of all time, if not my very favorite band of all time. And for good reason. A lot of people are big Zeppelin fans out there. They're one of the biggest bands in the world, in the rock world. And Zach is just recently getting familiar with Led Zeppelin's music. So, Zach, what are some of the tunes that you like by Zeppelin?
Well, it's very difficult. There are too many to really list all of them. But if I have to pick a few, really any of the songs with the amazing bass lines, like a Lemon Song. You know, all the more popular songs too are also amazing. Heartbreaker, Black Dog, Immigrant Song. And I'm also a big fan of T for One and Achilles' Last Stand.
Wow.
No Quarter.
Yeah, there's
Oh wait, how could I have forgotten? One of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs of all time,
what's that?
Whole Lotta Love.
Whole Lot of Love.
Alright.
Yeah, who doesn't love Whole Lot of Love? That's where the lava rock began, right there.
And Hot Dog. Anyways.
Hot Dog, yeah. You know, when I was, this dates back to probably 1996, but 1996 marks the year that I became a Led Zeppelin bootleg collector. And I got my very first Led Zeppelin live bootleg at a KISS convention. And there was a guy selling all these bootleg concerts and stuff. And that began my journey that has lasted to this day, where I have collected every conceivable available Led Zeppelin bootleg, and I've gotten familiar with their live work. And it's one of the things about Led Zeppelin that I personally love, is that they're kind of like two bands. In the studio, Jimmy Page was their producer, so having a really capable producer in the band who used the studio to its fullest capabilities, Zeppelin benefited from that and took recording to a whole new level. And so they tended to just treat the studio like, you know, why limit ourselves? Well, let's see what we can do with this, all these tools at our disposal. And then when they played live, I read once where Jimmy Page said that playing live was chiefly for the development of new ideas. So there was a lot of experimentation and improvisation going on stage from night to night, where no two Led Zeppelin shows were the same. They were always reaching their reach, exceeded their grasp just a little bit. So that's why I believe, you know, sometimes Jimmy Page especially, but the band gets criticized for being a little sloppy in the live setting, a little meandering, but they were really trying to go beyond what they already had down and trying to reach for new inspiration for their songs. So it's real interesting to listen to them from the earliest late '68 bootleg to their last tour of Berlin in 1980, and to hear the development along the way. And you can hear where some songs, for instance, if you've seen the Song Remains the Same movie from 1973, the 1973 tour, they were playing a little section in Dazed and Confused called San Francisco. And that guitar part was actually, it ended up a couple years later being one of the chief guitar parts for Achilles' Last Stand. And so live, they were kind of right right there, then and there, live, they would try things out and try to evolve things and use the inspiration that they were getting from the crowds and the stage to bring into their music. And I just always thought that that was such a great approach. And their albums benefited from taking those risks and from harnessing that inspiration. So we're going to kind of go through the first few albums here, and then in the next episode here we'll go through the last few and then kind of sum it up. But starting with Zeppelin's first album, you got stuff like Good Times, Bad Times, and Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, and you know, Dazed and Confused, and How Many More Times. And they really, legend has it that that album was recorded in something like 21 hours. Just miraculous when you listen back to it. And then on Led Zeppelin 2, which was put out very soon thereafter, and I believe that's your favorite Led Zeppelin album so far.
Well, it's hard to pick a favorite, but as an album, it's definitely my favorite album to listen all the way through to. I mean, there are other albums with more songs that I think are my favorites, but as you know, in the art of album making, they really succeeded, in my opinion, with Led Zeppelin 2.
You know, that album was made on the road mostly. They had to just find studio time where they could because their touring schedule was so heavy in that first couple of years, or first few years as a band. And so it's just amazing to think that, I mean, Led Zeppelin 2 is as classic of a as a classic album gets. You got A Whole Lot of Love, What Is and What Should Never Be, Thank You, Lemon Song, Heartbreaker, Livin', Lovin', Made, Moby Dick, Bring It On Home. Just a fantastic album, and it was mostly done on the road. So then that brings us to Led Zeppelin 3, which gets criticized by a lot of fans. Personally, I think the criticism is, some of it's warranted, but you got to remember that this is the album that opens with the Immigrant Song, and if nothing else, that damn song is one of the badassest piece of rock lava music that ever existed in the history of mankind. Where can you go wrong with the Immigrant Song?
Well, to quote a interpretation of the lyrics of that song, I want to go where there's rest and shore. Or show, my bad.
The Japanese pressing has some inaccurate lyrics that are pretty freaking hilarious.
Worth checking out if you can get.
Yeah, if you can get your hand on it. But I mean, that's all. You know, a lot of people are really into, you know, the other deeper cuts on that album, which there are quite a few deep cuts on that album. I think that's why it gets a bit unfairly criticized. You've got, you know, Friends, and Since I've Been Loving You, and Out on the Tiles, and Gallows Pole, and That's the Way, Tangerine. Very heavily influenced on the acoustic side with this album, because Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, before they went in to record this album, they decided to take a little trip to this little cottage in the Welsh countryside, a place called Branrar, and the two of them and a couple friends just went there with some acoustics and no running electricity or whatever, and they just kind of stripped it down to the more elemental acoustic stylings that are very prevalent on that album. So that's a very, you know, controversial between the fans album. Is it good? Is it you know, overrated? But as I said, it opens with the Immigrant Song. So that brings us to Led Zeppelin 4, which is one of the top selling albums of all time.
Definitely a fan favorite album wise.
Indeed.
Remember Ozzy Osbourne saying it was one of his favorites.
Yeah, yep. It's highly influential album and was definitely a turning point for the band, and just that's when they became mega superstars with obviously you've got Stairway to Heaven being the stuff of legend.
Being the stairway to the top.
Yeah, the Stairway to the Top.
That's been used before.
But you know, you've got Black Dog and Rock and Roll and Going to California, When the Levee Breaks, Four Sticks, Battle of Evermore. It really shows the diversity of the band. Personally, for me, the album Rock Radio wore that album out for me long ago. I would be happy to never hear the album again, but I give it all due credit as being a classic album. And most importantly for me personally, I think it was the period that, as a live band, 1971, especially towards the month of September in 71, when Zeppelin toured Japan, that was the peak of their live powers, in my opinion. I don't think they ever got better as a live band than they were in 1971. Robert Plant was still screaming like a banshee, and the band was just in top form during that year. So the next album, after the fourth album, is their fifth album, Houses of the Holy. One of my personal favorites. I guess I can't say my very, because that's just...
And you don't have to choose.
You don't have to choose. That's the beautiful thing about music, isn't it? But Houses of the Holy, you got opens up with The Song Remains the Same, and the Rain Song, which is one of the best 1-2 punches in all of rock and roll. You got Over the Hills and Far Away. You've got Dancing Days, No Quarter, Jermaker. A lot of people call it Dire Maker. It's Jermaker, like Jamaica, and I believe Did You Make Her was the pun. That song gets criticized for not being reggae enough drumming wise, but I think that's what makes it brilliant, is John Bonham's drumming with some rock reggae, and it's a very catchy, snappy tune. Take it or leave it. I will take it, thank you. And then you got The Ocean. Great closer to the album. And so that's the first 5 Zeppelin albums, and so at this point Zeppelin was less of a blues-based band and getting more into a mystical side, and it's very evident in the coming albums that we will get to next time, and this will be just a couple days away. So but you got any last thoughts on Zeppelin here before we sign off from part 1?
Hot Dog's one of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs.
Well, we're coming to that one. That'll be in the next episode here. So we'll make sure we have some time to talk about Hot Dog and you know, some of the other.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Robert Plant's. You know, one of the things that the hardcore Zeppelin fans call Robert Plant's banter in between songs. They call it plantations. So when Robert kind of waxes nostalgically on stage or philosophically, he's partaking in his plantations, quote unquote, and there's some good ones. So but we'll explore more of that next time around. Until then, want to thank you guys for all your support with the music, and let you know our new album is coming along really well. It's exceeding our expectations, and we look forward to playing you some clips here really soon. More to come on that. So
if you have any thoughts on Led Zeppelin, feel free to comment them.
Indeed, we would love to hear your thoughts on Led Zeppelin as well. So till next time, keep on rocking.